Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name's Don Arleth, and you're watching World Talks here on TVP World, live from Warsaw. We're still following the elections in Hungary, and we have the latest numbers here. 66% of the votes have been counted, and current results put the opposition Tisza party at 137 seats in parliament out of 200, and Fidesz having only 55, looking like quite a different situation in Budapest tonight. And now we're joined by Romain Le Quiniou, Managing Director at Eurocreative. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us here on World Talks.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
Yes, I see that beautiful Parliament building behind you, all lit up in the Hungarian capital, and it looks like there are going to be some big changes there with this 66% reporting of the ballots, 137 for Tisza, 55 seats for Fidesz. What do you make of these results?
Absolutely, it looks like a historic night in Hungary, a historic voting day, because Viktor Orbán, after 16 years of power, is going to fall. He just conceded the defeat to Péter Magyar, and now the question is to know if or not Péter Magyar will be able to obtain or not the two-thirds majority.
Right, now with that supermajority, if he is able to get it, that will make his job staying in power and actually making significant changes to Hungary possible. If he doesn't get it, how will that complicate their ruling of the country and all of the traps that Viktor Orbán has left behind?
Yes, that's a good question, because we don't know yet. First thing to say is that the two-thirds majority is not guaranteed, and I think one of the elements to follow in the coming hours is basically to know if Mihazeng, the extreme right party, will make it or not to the parliament. If they don't, it means that Péter Magyar is likely to get the two-thirds majority, which would facilitate his life and facilitate his government for sure. Now, if he doesn't get the two-thirds majority, it means that he will get a simple majority, which means that this is a problem for him, because he will not be in control of the things, and he will not be able to de-Orbanize, as he said, Hungary, which means that it will be much more complicated for him to advance on such reforms that he promised to the electors. I mean here, the struggle against the corruption, against the systemic corruption that Viktor Orbán and his allies made in Hungary over the past few years. It would be also very difficult for him to get rid of, the deficiencies regarding the rule of law that Viktor Orbán installed in Hungary, which means that he will not get rid of the people that Viktor Orbán nominated. And last but not least, if Péter Magyar is not obtaining the two-thirds majority, then he will have also a problem when it comes to the media, because he will not be able to nominate also, or to unnominate the people that have been, put there loyal to the regime in the public media. So there are a lot of questions today, but one thing that seems clear is that Péter Magyar and Tisza will be able to form a government, and this is already an extraordinary reason, because we need to remember that those elections were not free and fair.
Right. Then there's the Hungarians living abroad, the diaspora vote. How do you expect that to, influence the final results? Could that be an important factor at the end of everything? And we know that takes a couple days to count.
Indeed, I think this is something to watch, of course, because we know that Hungarian abroad, and especially those who are in the neighboring countries, are voting for Viktor Orbán and Fidesz, and this has been the case for the past few years. One thing I would like to recall is that Péter Magyar and his allies have been doing quite a lot of campaign there as well, and we might expect that this time Orbán will not win more or less 90% in this diaspora, but still is looking to win there, and we need to wait for those counting of the votes that might take a few days. But still, I believe that as of tonight, and again, Viktor Orbán conceded defeat to Péter Magyar, it should not change the result per se, meaning that Péter Magyar will win, but indeed it can affect the results, and it can affect basically the two-third majority possibility for Péter Magyar. But the first thing to look, in my opinion, is especially if Mi Hazánk, this third party, will make it or not in the parliament. And now it's very close.
Right now, Viktor Orbán has accused Brussels of interfering in this election. Do you think, so far with the results posted, do you think that there's a potential for Viktor Orbán to want to challenge something and say that Brussels somehow interfered in this election and the results are contested?
First and foremost, once again, Viktor Orbán called Péter Magyar and conceded defeat, so I think it's a positive step. And, it means that very likely the results are so consequent that basically Viktor Orbán has no choice to concede defeat. We know that a bit of a narrative was put over the past few days and has been reinforced over the past few hours that Fidesz, many politicians from this party say that, there were some irregularities and all these things, but at the moment we cannot see that Viktor Orbán will not accept defeat. So this is a given. Now, indeed, he has been accusing, or a lot of his people around this party, but also some foreign actors, I'm thinking here about Vice President Vance, accused Brussels of interfering. What I saw during this campaign was not Brussels interfering. I think that Brussels, of course, had some preferences, which were that Viktor Orbán would lose power. I think this is safe to say, but I think that the EU has been restraining itself, and many of the politicians from the EU, from many capitals there, have been restraining themselves to basically say that Orbán should lose. So what we see was not necessarily EU interference. There was a preference, we cannot hide it, but the interference didn't come from the EU. The interference was obvious from Russia, and the interference was obvious over the past few weeks from Washington. This is a fact, this is the reality, and this has to be acknowledged, because this is something that you cannot just let people lie about the situation and the reality of the facts.
Yes, absolutely. With that said, it looks like those efforts backfired, and they didn't do what they were intended to do. Viktor Orbán seems at this point is lost.
Yes, and I think that we need to acknowledge the reality is that international relations, geopolitics, were not the #1 topic for Hungarian voters and Hungarian citizens today. They voted Viktor Orbán out because they were unsatisfied by the domestic situation. They were unsatisfied by the poor results at the economic level. They were unsatisfied by the quality of civil services, of the public services, but also about their standard of life. Basically, the last mandate of Viktor Orbán showed that his priorities, what he promised to his electorate, he was not able to achieve it. It's a high inflation, it's a loss of purchasing power, it's a lack of foreign investment, and at the end, it's a very poor economic result. So now, the task for Péter Magyar, of course, we talked about the fact that Péter Magyar and Tisza promised to put an end to Orbán regime. But the second priority, and this is a very important priority if he wants to succeed in the long term in Hungarian politics, is to deliver especially on what he promised to electorate, which is bring back economic growth as well as improve public services and the quality of life of Hungarians, which has been not improving over the past few years.
The latest results are in. 72% of votes counted. That gives 138 seats to Péter Magyar's Tisza and 54 to Viktor Orbán's Fidesz. With those results in mind, we know that the bigger population centers take longer to count. What do you think that these numbers say looking towards the end of the night?
Hungarian system is a complicated electoral system, so it's safe for now to say that Péter Magyar is in position to get and to obtain this two-thirds majority, but nothing is done. And I think that we need to wait a bit more during the night and to see if this two-thirds majority is materializing. Right now it's 138 seats. He needs 133 seats to get the two-thirds majority, so this is a positive result, but we need to wait a bit. We need to see how the big cities, but not the capital, has been voting, and if it was indeed a landslide victory for Péter Magyar, and if he will be able to change things the way he wants, and more importantly, the way the majority of Hungarians wants and prove today.
Right. Well, here in Poland, we're very interested in what the future brings for Ukraine, for Hungary blocking the 90 billion euros to Ukraine for its survival this year and next. What do you think Péter Magyar is going to do about that? Will that money get dispersed relatively quick now? Will he end Hungary's opposition to distributing this money to Kyiv?
Well, it's a complicated issue because Péter Magyar has been very careful not to talk too much about Ukraine and not to talk too much about Russia. What we know is that, Péter Magyar will follow national interest for Hungary. What does it mean? We will see. But the important thing is that probably it will allow more easy situation in Brussels, meaning that Hungary will not put veto as a default opinion or as a default position. Still, we don't know what will happen on two sides. First, what will be the position on specific things from Péter Magyar? On the one side, the help to Ukraine. It looks like Péter Magyar is, understanding the situation and who is the victim and who is the aggressor. Russia being the aggressor, Ukraine being the victim. But at the same time, Péter Magyar, following the majority of the population in Hungary, is also concerned when it comes to Ukraine membership to the European Union. So I think it will be, as Péter Magyar said, a balanced, a pragmatic solution towards Ukraine as well as towards Russia. I think he's been very clear on this. What we don't know as well is how other European member states will behave, because to my opinion, many, or a few at least, member states in the European Union have been hiding just behind Viktor Orbán and his vetoes to block Ukraine on several things. So I think that will be very interesting weeks in the European Parliament, in the European Council, and in Brussels, because we will see who really supports Ukraine and who was just hiding.
Speaking of other countries, Péter Magyar has said that he will travel to Poland as his first foreign trip. We know that the relationship between Hungary will vastly change now if Péter Magyar is confirmed as the next Prime Minister of Hungary. What do you expect for that relationship? And there are two fugitives of Polish justice that have sought refuge in Hungary. What happens to them?
Well, I think, and with all disrespect, I think it's a secondary issue there. Of course, this is important to remember that there is a special link, a special friendship link between, Hungarian and Polish nations, between Hungarian and Polish citizens, right? So this is, to my opinion, a very good signal that Péter Magyar, as the new Prime Minister, would visit Poland first. This is very important. It gives also a signal that, this is a strengthening of the eastern flank. This is a strengthening of the European Union as well as NATO on the eastern flank. When it comes to this, we will see how it improves. I think also the fact that Prime Minister Tusk as well as future likely Prime Minister Magyar are from EPP, so they are from the same group on the European politics. So this is also a positive signal, and we know how much the EPP has been in support to Ukraine and has been in support of reinforcing and strengthening security when it comes to the eastern flank. One note here is that Hungary is also a country that will benefit a lot from safe instruments for safe funding, so it means that Hungary will become also a place of focus when it comes to defense industry and how to reinforce European security per se. When it comes to the fugitives, as you call them, this is a different topic, I guess, and this will be about the decision of the future government to see how they will want to proceed with those people, with those individuals. And as for the moment, again, I believe it's a secondary topic, but we understand very much that it's an important topic when it comes to Poland and its domestic politics.
Certainly. Romain Le Quiniou, Managing Director at Eurocreative, thank you so much for the conversation, and we'll be watching the rest of the night to see what these final numbers look like. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thank you for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.